Guns at the ready. Set. Yeah, I cut my fucking fingernails. Ow.
Well,
Worth it.
Pretty damn good.
you were about to say something, but let me finish what you were about to say. Ladies and gentlemen,
hello,
friends of the show. This is the 4099 podcast with your hosts Dima and
what's up? It's Nick.
And Nick has been on a roll these last couple of episodes, and I'm gonna let him take the intro away on this one as well. So let's do it.
Yeah, I've been working on like the creative process here. So this isn't going to be the traditional 4099 weekly podcast. This is going to be a weekly series a monthly series that we start here with my good friend and pseudo family member. I'm gonna say pseudo family member.
Don't ask for a kidney, but yeah.
You sure? What's your blood type?
They're no good at this point, but...
Okay, fair enough. Ladies and gentlemen, let's welcome Bryon. All right, Bryon, so why don't you just go ahead and tell us a little bit about yourself? Give us your background.
All right. I was in the Army for 7 years, deployed once overseas, the second time. After I got out of the military, I completed an associate's degree in education. I also finished a bachelor's of science in historical studies with a minor in education. I currently teach at a detention facility. Unfortunately, I can't really tell you anything beyond that, but I teach pretty much all of the history courses and all of the math courses for grades 7 through 12. It sounds more glamorous than it really is, but I like to blow smoke up my own ass.
Hey man, but that's really that's a good story, just because like not only do we have, when we're trying to put this kind of series together, we're thinking we need someone that's, first of all, a rock star, which you are, and second of all, someone that's credible, right? Someone that's been through the ropes.
I'd like to correct you a little bit. He's a rocket star.
A rocket star, yeah.
I don't know about all that, guys. But
a rocket star, man, and yeah, no, I mean, I didn't know who you were. Nick kind of told me about you.
Yeah.
We met up a little bit earlier before we came over here in the studio, but yeah, I mean, not only do you have the, I guess you can say, credibility in the classroom, but you also have the credibility as a former soldier. I'm assuming you've been around have you been deployed or?
Yeah, I deployed once.
Okay.
15 months.
15 months. And can you get into the time frame just to give people a little bit of a background?
Deployed from 2008 to 2009 as known as Operation Forward Presence, is toward the backside of Enduring Freedom. Doesn't sound, it's one of those, sounds way more glamorous than it really is, but the reality of it is I was in Qatar, just outside of Kuwait and Iraq. I worked with Patriot Missile, so
rocket star.
So our focus through that entire ordeal was more about Iran. We actually knew about Iran's nuclear dealings 5 or 6 months before Americans found out about that. But I had few separate jobs over there, but mainly mine was to march order and in place the Patriot radar, but also work as early warning system analyst and command and control hub.
And that's why that's super cool for me, not only because it's the military, and the military is really, I mean, I'm fascinated by it, but just because
of so many questions and they never stop, and I'm just like, Dima, not now.
Well, I'm actually drawing a point of relation here. I mean, we're going to be talking about a lot of history on this show.
Right.
And in order to have a full grasp of history, I feel like someone needs to go out and see the world a little bit.
Well, that's kind of how I got into history, was because of the military. It's kind of funny how it worked out. It's easy for me to relate to a lot of these people that believe in these conspiracy theories, because there was a time I was that guy. and it really happened when I was deployed. I had this sergeant all the time. He was like, he's from Arkansas or wherever. He's like, Nelson, I'm telling you, war's coming. You better pick a side. I'm like, whatever. South's going to rise again. Cool. Whatever. Well, he brought me this bootleg of this documentary called America from Freedom to Fascism. It's total crap. I know that now. But the whole premise of the documentary was there's no law that requires anyone to pay a federal income tax, but if you don't pay, you still go to jail. It's this big thing. And somehow or another, this leads to a New World Order and forced vaccines and all this garbage, right? I spent the rest of my deployment just ordering books and having them delivered overseas and just reading every chance I got, trying to catch up on it. And like, I got so down the rabbit hole, I was like, a war's coming, you better pick a side. So that's why when I got out of the military, I decided I got to go to college. I got to figure out what's going on, who's trying to screw me. Fortunately, I had enough time out of the military to calm down and let the paranoia kind of wear off a little bit and learn how to do actual research rather than, Google it and call it research. So there's a lot of stuff that goes on that I've learned that kind of looks like a conspiracy until you look at the bigger picture and you can see things from the past to the present. So, I owe a lot to that. But.
So, in a nutshell, that's what this entire segment's going to be about. We're going to try to bring you guys an episode once a month where we just kind of kick back and reflect on history and project some sort of a forecast for what the future may hold.
And, to kick this series off, what's on the menu today?
All right, round one. So we just had an election, and we decided it'd be a really good time to just go ahead and round out the Electoral College. That being said, I know very, very little about it. Please, Dima, do you know anything about this?
I know a bit, but I really want you to go ahead and break it down for us, because you probably know way more than me and Nick do. We're out there licking doorknobs,
I definitely got a couple today.
It's still pretty weird for myself, but the best way to think of the Electoral College is don't think of the presidential election as one election. Think of it as 50 little elections. The only catch is each one of those votes all plays into the greater whole, and each one of those wins adds up a little bit differently. So, Pennsylvania is worth 20, whereas North Dakota's worth a whopping 3. And that's all based on your population in your state. Same thing with your House of Representatives.
Now, what is, just to cut in here, excuse me, what is the biggest amount of points?
Like what state offers the most? California offers the most with 55.
55. And then I think Florida's 50, right? Or something like that?
Florida is third. And I want to say...
Is it New York is second?
No, second is Texas.
Tejas.
Yeah. To be honest with you, I cannot recall exactly how many each state has at the time, but I do know California is 1, Texas is 2nd, Pennsylvania is 3rd or 4th at 20. So most of the states are lower end points, but it's your big states and more higher populous states that are going to carry the most, and it's all based on population of the state. That's why the census is so important. It's not just for House of Representatives members, but it's also for your electoral votes. So
now, a lot of people and news outlets and whatever, I feel like the main theme that I've been hearing is those battleground states, right?
The swing states?
Yeah, the swing states, the ones that, if you're in a really tight race, you got to hit those.
Oh, yeah. The swing states are important. The reality of it is because of the Electoral College, it's created this dual party system. But the swing states are kind of the catch. North Carolina is a swing state. The only reason it's called a swing state is because it does swing blue or swing red. It just depends on what time of the decade you're talking about. But some other states, like Oklahoma, we're pretty much as guaranteed it's going to be red. It's rare that ever changes. California's always going to be blue. So the downside of that is, even though there are a ton of Republican voters in, say, California, you're really not going to spend a lot of time if you're the Republican candidate. If you're President Trump, you're not going to spend a lot of time in California, because even if you do rally up all of those Republican voters, you're still going to get outweighed come election, and with an electoral college system like ours, each state is winner take all. So it's, with the exception of Nebraska and Maine, every state is winner take all. So all of those votes for Republicans in California don't really matter when it comes time to focus on North Carolina.
Right.
So
the name of the game is efficiency. You want to, especially when you're out there campaigning, you want to go to very precise locations that you know will get you that red or that blue. Now, speaking of both candidates, I think whenever I don't really dabble too much into politics, but I know just based off of the news I was reading that Trump, his, I guess you can call it strategy, was hitting not the big cities, but the cities in the middle of nowhere, kind of, that...
Right. That's typically going to be your conservative strategy. You see that if you look at the political map, you're seeing this huge swath of red right through the middle. It's one of those deals, he's going to win. It's pretty rare that he's going to lose the middle ground. But at the same time, it's not going to be efficient for him to hit every tiny little town, because most of those towns, if you look at it by county, cornfields, whatever. But if he hits those smaller cities, major cities like that, those people are going to come to him. So that's really all that's about. It's just a matter of, you can't hit every town. So it's kind of like, I'm from Wilkesboro. He's not coming to Wilkesboro, but he might come to, say, Boone or Greensboro. It's going to be more efficient for me to go to see him if that's the thing I'm trying to do.
Right. Now, we have a lot of information out here kind of to help people digest all this. Again, focusing on the Electoral College, we talked a little bit about why it's important for whether it be Republican or Democrats to cover certain strategic game plans. I'm assuming Democrats aim towards the bigger cities, Republicans aim towards the kind of a little bit smaller, kind of.
I mean, there's always exceptions.
Conservative areas. We talked about swing states. We talked about how you talked about how certain states will just always be blue or always be red.
Right.
I feel like it's a good moment to kind of go back a little bit into history and talk about maybe the history of the Electoral College and how this kind of how this started. How did this all come to be?
Well, there were several reasons the founding fathers created the Electoral College in the first place. One of those reasons is during the ratification of the Constitution, we were well aware that most citizens couldn't read, they couldn't write, we really didn't the founders really didn't trust the average American. Say what?
It was mistrust.
Yeah, they really didn't trust Americans to make good choices. They might vote for a new king or a bug or something, whatever. But there were also other catches as well. You have to remember that, the Revolutionary War had just ended. We're currently claiming to be a country in 1776, but we're still at war with this country that says, no, we belong to them till 1784. Under the Articles of Confederation, we're trying to operate here, and it's garbage, because if you ever look at the history of anything that has to do with a confederacy, it rarely works. So by 1787, we finally ratified the Constitution as we know it today with the first 10 amendments. But as part of that, we have these 13 original colonies, and we're still very much agricultural based. One of the important things that you have to remember is there had to be a lot of concessions that were made to bringing these southern states, because we're still dealing with that issue of slavery. So your northern states have a high population of white landowning men, whereas you have a lot of white landowning men in the South, but as far as the actual populations of who's going to be able to vote, the North is going to dominate every time. This is the same reason the 3/5 compromise came into place. You're aware of that. But as part of that, we adopted this Electoral College concept. So we used it as a means to say we really don't trust the average American to make this kind of decision. It also helped to kind of balance out the representation between the North and the South. And it has worked. It worked fairly well, but there have always been exceptions to the rules. and another important thing to remember is pretty much since the start, people have been bickering about getting rid of the Electoral College. This is not a new argument. We've been fighting over getting rid of the Electoral College for centuries. Unfortunately, the Constitution is very difficult to amend for the same reason that we had to make those other concessions to keep the southern states in. We wanted to make sure you couldn't just back out later.
Right.
So,
which a lot of people are talking about. A lot of people are talking about there in some point in the future. And you can maybe kind of throw this into the conspiracy bin, but the secession of the states, like not secession, excuse me, the kind of Texas breaking off, right, or maybe California breaking off, or stuff like that. It's very hard, you think?
No, it's not going to happen.
Not going to happen.
There's a lot of differences between present day America and antebellum pre-Civil War time frame, especially in regards to how we view ourselves in relation to the federal government. Prior to the Civil War, each state viewed itself as a sovereign power, which we just delegated a small portion over to the federal government. After the Civil War, all the states that wanted to come back to the Union were required to ratify in their own state constitutions a clause that forbade them from ever seceding again. Texas is the only exception to the rule where they haven't got an official statement like that, and they always try to make this claim of, we could leave. No, you can't. It's not going to be that easy. Every major election, some county somewhere, under Obama, there was an area near Washington State in California that had talked about seceding from the Union.
They said, we've had fun now, but we out.
It's not going to happen. Another big issue to remember is we now have National Guards that, by order, can fall under the direct authority of the President of the United States. So he essentially has a second army rather than just the active military and the National Guard. He essentially has two armies at his discretion now. Whereas during the Civil War, you had 4 or 5 different North Carolina armies, 2 or 3 Virginia armies. Then you had the Union Army. That was a big thing that cost the South the war in the first place. They had too many heads of the snake, whereas the Union Army figured out fairly quick you need one central power. And Lincoln also was able to manipulate that war because this was the first time where we could ever have mass communication from the commander-in-chief by telegraph. Yeah. Right. So you have one commander running the entire battlefield versus 5 different generals in 5 locations trying to use their best discretion and have no idea what the other one's doing.
Right, yeah. Yeah, man, that's what I'm getting here is it's a very complicated system of governance, really. I mean, it's pretty much thought of everything, right, when they were making this constitution and building this country up.
It's seeming like a bit of a spider web.
Yeah.
Well, you have to remember that a lot of these things that were implemented, they had no background to work with. This was all brand new thing, but the one thing that pretty much everybody was in line with was we didn't want a new king. So we have to figure out a way to give enough power to the people to where we can keep that, no king policy in play for a long time, keep a strong government. We've seen that this federal government needs to be strong. The Articles of Confederation proved that. But we don't want to make it too strong. That's why we've created the Bill of Rights in the first place. But a lot of things you have to remember is that there's a lot of concessions that were made too that not every founding father was on board and said, hey, this is a great idea. They're not unified. They're just, you win some, you lose some.
Yeah, me in the middle, I guess.
Yeah. And the Electoral College was one of those things. There were a lot of founding fathers that did support the idea of, I'm sorry.
No worries.
They did support the idea of a popular vote, but a lot of people, especially in southern states, they just didn't, and they got overruled. So.
Nick, I see you thinking over there. You
should be taking notes.
This will be on the test later, so.
Motherfucker. Pencil that.
But the thing about it is people usually they want to complain that because of the Electoral College, your vote doesn't count, so why bother? And the reality of it is that is an extremely rare case. There's only been 167 cases in the entire history of America of what's called faithless electors. And basically what a faithless elector is when that elector chooses to vote for somebody different other than what the people of that elector's state said to vote for. And I believe it's like 140 of them happened during Rutherford B. Hayes' election in 1872.
So during the same election.
Yeah. Yeah, and we were talking about that earlier. Hayes was it Hayes? It was a good beer. 1872. This was one of the first times that the Electoral College was really put to the test because we have this popular vote showing one thing. I mean, this wasn't the first time, but this was a big time. So we had the Electoral College showing one thing and the popular vote showing a different thing. And we're in the middle of that whole manifest destiny thing. Colorado is a new state, and they're throwing this whole wrench in the monkey works, so to speak. Samuel Tilden actually won the election. But at the end of the day, by the time the electors get to Congress and they cast the official vote, after this investigation, it's swayed the other way.
He'd been bamboozled.
He'd been bamboozled. So this is where that great compromise of 1877 came in, I believe. I'm getting drunk, sorry. This is officially what ended Reconstruction during the Civil War. They basically made a deal. It's like, we'll give you, we're not going to give you Tilden, but we will end Reconstruction. They're like, okay, cool. So,
well, we got two ways we can slice the cake here. We got a pitchfork here, right? We can either get into maybe, because I really want to hear you talk about ultimately what led to the downfall of the Confederates, the Southern state, or
why did they lose the war?
Or we can talk about the big thing that's going on right now, which is who really won the election, because of the fact that, well, we know who really officially won the election, but there's a huge debate as to I think this is the first time in history and during an election where a virus is shutting things down and people are putting in. No, not the first time.
No.
Well, essentially where I'm getting at here is because of the mail-in ballots and stuff like that, there's been major question marks as to who's bringing the ballots in, why are they all marked a certain way. I mean,
well, let's be honest, there's only certain people asking those questions.
Yeah.
But no, I mean, the whole mail-in ballot thing comes from probably the most difficult time for people to voting, and that was the Civil War. Mail-in voting has been used traditionally by soldiers in wartime or overseas since the Civil War. There
you have it, folks.
It has never been an issue. It really wasn't an issue this time, but then all of a sudden it was an issue.
Supreme Court.
Yeah, the Supreme Court has already ruled that states, they're not going to interfere. There's been no evidence so far to support that any kind of election fraud has taken place. And if anything, these states are making sure they're crossing their T's and dotting their I's, because our president has made it very clear he's already going to call fraud, regardless of, unless he wins, of course. And that's exactly what's happened. Yeah, there's several lawsuits are currently in Vegas. It no longer even matters anymore, but Vegas is still counting their votes. This is not going to be like the 2000 election. This is not Bush versus Gore, where there actually was some evidence to define a recount, because CBS News is calling the election early when Florida's in two different time zones, and there's things that are debatable at best on there. This is pretty clear cut, at least in my opinion. I haven't seen anything yet, but this day and age, who knows? Anything could happen, but it's pretty safe to say that if every single major news outlet, to include Fox News, has already said Biden won, you can bet they checked everything 10 times before they mentioned it. It's not going to be something they just pulled out of their ass.
Well, again, there you go, folks. I mean,
don't pull things out of your ass.
Don't pull things out of your ass.
Leave them in there.
It's meant to be in there. So yeah, let's get into unless Nick, you want to go somewhere else with it. I really want to get your thoughts.
I mean, it does kind of sound like we've kind of smashed out the Electoral College.
I mean, there's a ton of other stuff, but yeah, we can talk about something else if you want.
So before we switch gears, though, I would ask, do you ever see the Electoral College being like dissolved?
Eventually, it'll have to fade away. There are some. I mean, there's a lot of things about the Electoral College that there are pros and cons to it. We're gradually seeing the Electoral College currently being chipped away right now. We have Nebraska and Maine. They have exceptions to their rules, so it's not winner take all for those states. They divide their electors up based on actual election results, which is essentially the next best thing to popular vote.
And when we say popular vote, that would be a direct democracy, right?
Right. And we are the only democratic nation on earth that practices the Electoral College. Everyone else does do a direct vote. Now, one of the, depending on, how you voted, one of the things the founders were concerned about was that if we let the people elect directly, there's the chance that they could accidentally elect a demagogue or, some crazy person, and the catch-22 to that is depending on which side of the fence you lean on, either that just happened or we just got done with it for the past 4 years. So that's debatable.
Yeah.
But at the same time, the only real downside to the Electoral College is that if you are a voter that votes differently than what your state votes, then a lot of times your vote doesn't count. So you live in Oklahoma, but you're a Democrat.
Sorry, man.
You might as well have just stayed home because it's 50 smaller elections rather than one giant election. On the other hand, though, this idea of faithless electors is extremely rare. Typically, your electors vote in line with what their state has said that they want to pick, so they already are kind of listening to your voice anyway. It's just indirectly. And another argument for the Electoral College is that, well, one of the pros to keep it is that if it's not for the Electoral College, then these candidates that are running, they're only going to focus on the major cities, and all those rural areas are never going to get listened to because it's not worth my time to fly down there and try to rally up.
Right. Then you're worried about mass communicating.
Right. So yeah, you're going to be hitting up the major cities.
We're not one at a time.
We're not one at a time in here. So that could be an issue. I would argue we are living in the digital age now, and I'm pretty sure people in, say, Indiana, I'm pretty sure they have the internet. I really doubt that we're going to be seeing a lot of laws being put in place that are going to be putting corn farmers out of business.
Yeah.
But you never know. On the other hand, though, when we're saying with the Electoral College, now we're giving the minority of America, these rural farmers, these rural people, we're giving them a greater voice than those people that are in the blue zones. The reality of it is past couple of years now, we've had a Republican dominant Senate. We've had a Republican president. We now have a Republican dominated Supreme Court, but less than 50% of the population identifies as Republican. So with the Electoral College, are you actually being represented? You're being represented by a minority. Yeah. So it's one of those debates where...
Let me just lay that out there. Fuck.
So it's one of those debates where your attitude is going to change based on where you live and where you grow up.
Right.
So
Son of a bitch.
this is good beer.
Yeah, I mean...
Sorry.
We have a special somebody that picks out the beer.
Yeah, we got a beer person.
Yeah?
Really hooks it up.
Well, they're doing a hell of a job. Whatever you're paying them, you should double it.
Oh, I mean, I think we tip okay.
Yeah, we tip.
I know I
pretty good.
tip. Do you tip?
Yeah, of course.
I don't know what they're paying you, but they should do better.
I don't know if she'll mind, but shout out to Carrie.
Yeah, shout out to Carrie.
Is that
Yeah, Carrie's
Right on, Carrie.
our beer person.
right on? But yeah,
10 out of 10.
10
Shit, 12 out of 10.
12 out
Absolutely.
of 10.
100 out of 10.
I ain't mad about it.
Like, everything's been a fucking zinger for me. I'm like, hell yeah.
Yeah, you were telling me about this, and I was like, I don't know, I'll give it a shot. I'm glad I did.
The flavor profile is booyah.
What'd you call it, like peanut butter or something right now?
I can't say that on air.
Oh, right on. Oh, I'm allergic to peanuts. This is bad, though.
I don't think that's in there.
Okay.
I don't think they actually put those in that.
Oh.
If they do, we'll quit the airing and we'll get you out of here real quick.
We'll have to airlift you out of here.
Yeah,
Right
we'll get a stretcher team in here.
Right. Cool.
He can't breathe. He a peanut.
Let me tell you about the history of allergies.
Well, listen, we've talked about a lot, man, and I want to get into maybe what the
Potential civil war? Is that what you're going to talk about?
No, I was actually going to ask a
ahead.
little bit more of a personal question in line with
It's proportional.
what the
Not that personal.
what your experience has been with teaching history or whatever, because I know you're pretty much teaching a whole bunch of different subjects, right? But what your history has been with teaching, and you were telling us a little bit in the viewers and listeners.
If we're switching gears, I'm switching beers.
Oh, okay, go ahead, kick it.
Well, I've only been teaching for 3 years now. But normally my experiences with it is usually kids show up to class because they're forced to if they want to graduate. And you can tell they don't want to be there, and it's kind of a rough crowd. But once you're able to say, this is why you should give a crap about the War of 1812, even though you're only 14 sitting in your desk, it actually matters. There are similarities today that could play out in the future that are playing out right now. You link that past to present, especially when you start dealing with politics of the world today. Students really start to relate to that, and you'll start hearing good questions.
And this relates directly into why we have this series in the first place, right? Mm-hmm. We're trying to get the beautiful listeners and viewers of this show a connection, right, to and a sense of connection to the past, so that we can draw those links back to where we live now, right? And so,
yeah, you want to see what we already did in the past, what we learned from that. Push that forward, and
that's the thing. I mean, everybody always says, if we forget the past, we're doomed to repeat it. And here's the thing: I wouldn't have a job if that were true. The reality of it, I actually had a college professor say at one time, "It's like you always heard, those that forget the past are doomed to repeat it." There's another half to that, and that's those that remember the past are damned to stand back and watch everyone else repeat it. And that happens all the time if you study history. But all those repeats are in those nuanced little details that you don't hear about in your regular high school history class.
I mean, that starts, we were talking about it a little bit off record. I mean, we, you'd mentioned that before, and I was like, starts getting into the micro level, right? Where you start looking at human psychology, right? And that's a lot of the time human thoughts are cyclical, and that is directly what we see in history, right? The fact that history repeats itself, the fact that everything, regardless of what's going on, it goes in a loop. It's a closed loop. So
that's one of the funny things about humans. If you were to go back in time and ask any human during their period of life, they are at the pinnacle of human development. It's never going to get any better, but you realize 1,000 years later, they were baboons at best. And the reality of it is we're not much better now. We just have better toys.
We're a little bit more. We got an AC, iPhone in the pocket, or whatever you prefer.
We got internet. That's pretty cool. But we just find new ways to do the same old things we've always done. One of the things I actually learned about was one of the things you always hear is like older people, like the boomers, and these millennials, these Gen Zs, they got no direction, they're whatever. You can actually find Sumerian text where it talks about these young kids today won't amount to anything. Nobody's sitting there taking care of them. Turns out every known civilization has complained about that same thing, and guess what? When you have grandkids, you're going to do the same thing. So
you gonna talk that shit.
You gonna talk that shit.
These
you know what?
Kids today got no direction.
I mean, it
Stay
comes
off
down.
my fucking grass.
Stay off my grass. It comes down to that, and it comes down to a discomfort with the new, right? A discomfort, and I think it's more of the discomfort comes with.
You're talking about a failure to adapt to change.
I think it's a lot of fear.
Fear is what I was going to say.
They don't really understand what it is.
Because it's exactly. They don't know.
Yeah.
Right. So
a lot of problems we see today is you hear people complaining that younger kids, they aren't learning anything in schools because kids can't figure out how to write checks. Like, first off, it's a piece of paper. It literally has the directions on it. There's a YouTube video. Checks are obsolete because we use debit cards now. Mm-hmm. Oh, and then, just as a side note, guess what, parent? You can teach your own kids. It's not a crime.
Yeah.
So.
Yeah, I mean, a lot of the time we just have to look at ourselves for a lot of the scenarios that we make up in our mind, right?
Right.
It's like, dude, I mean, at the end of the day, you're out here complaining this and that, but look at yourself first.
Yeah.
Look at yourself
first. It's the same reason I didn't teach your kid how to read a sundial either. It's kind of... So.
Yeah, I mean,
I'm
Nick,
not reading no fucking sundial.
What you thinking? What you got?
Well, I mean, I had a little comment about adages earlier. I didn't know there was a second half to that adage of those that forget the past or whatever. Apparently, a lot of adages go like half spoken because there's that whole like blood is thicker than water.
Oh yeah, it's not.
That's not the full adage.
It's a little out of context.
Yeah, it's actually what is it? The water, the blood of the covenant is thicker than the water of the womb, which is completely opposite of what you would think if you just heard the half of it.
Context.
Yeah, basically you get to pick your friends. You can't pick your family, but your friends are more important.
Right.
Yeah. We were actually just talking about that earlier.
Yeah. That's all I got hung up right there. I was like everybody like forgetting this shit. Like, you fucking people up. Anyway, that's enough of that.
So as far as the Electoral College, that's where babies come from.
Fucking gremlins.
But yeah.
So hey, we're.
I've said it once. I'll say it again. It's a question. I'll ask it again. Is there going to be another World War? I mean, Civil War or World War? Tell me about the next war. I'm ready, Bryon.
No, you're too young, Padawan.
Einstein once said that he didn't know what World War III would be fought with, but World War IV would be fought with sticks and stones. So if there is another great war, it's going to be a disaster, depending on how far anyone's willing to push it. That being said, though, to have another civil war, you're going to have a division, like a legitimate geographical division of sides, and I just don't see that happening. On the other hand, we did see the Bleeding Kansas incident prior to the Civil War. We literally saw people packing up from the north and the south, moving into Kansas just to sway the vote to make them a
so when you
state.
say bleeding, you don't mean that there was blood.
Oh, there was. That's why it was called the Bleeding Kansas incident. Basically, that's what happened was we had the Missouri Compromise that basically said any new states that are going to be moving out west during this manifest destiny. Any states that go to the south are going to be required to be slave states. Any states to the north are going to be required to be free states. Then Kansas kind of comes in and kind of screws that up, in a nutshell. So they said, here's what we'll do. We'll give Kansas the ability to make their own decision. Are they going to be free or slave? We saw tons of people over just a few years move into Kansas just so they could make that vote to try to sway the vote. So we had such a high concentration of abolitionists versus pro-slave
all in
mixing all in one area. It erupted. Over 200 people dead. This is where John Brown became famous. John Brown.
I know Leroy Brown.
John Brown's body is rolling in his grave.
I have never heard that.
Yeah, John Brown is a famous figure in the.
Yeah,
even I know that, and I'm an immigrant. Come on, man.
You immigrated before you were 10. You had time to learn these things. All right.
I'm just giving you a hard time, man.
Well, John Brown was a hardcore abolitionist, and he was a big contributor to the Bleeding Kansas incident and fled. He was caught in South Carolina when he was trying to raid, ironically, a Union military base to try to steal weapons to give to local slaves and local plantations to create a rebellion uprising. Unfortunately, he and his sons got caught.
Oh, fuck.
They were hung, but his last words was like, I'm trying to remember exactly what he said, but the sins of this country cannot be cleaned but without blood. And it was, it laid the groundwork for a bunch of that conspiracy stuff. Was John Brown a government agent for the Union trying to upset the South? The North keeps saying we had nothing to do with him. They had every opportunity to pardon him. They didn't do it. They still hung him. But nonetheless, this was one of those, flames that lit the powder keg.
So blood is the Windex of history.
Yeah.
You can say that, I guess.
Well, the what is it? The roots. I don't remember. There's a bunch of all those sayings like that. But long story short, the people that really don't have to do the fighting are the ones that are really quick to talk about the blood that you need to be shedding for liberty. So.
Yeah, that is a very important.
Get them, boys. Get them.
I mean,
you fight. I have bone spurs in my feet.
I'll catch up.
Well, I mean, a lot of the things that I've been experiencing and seeing is exactly that. I mean, it's a whole bunch of talk.
Yeah, it's nothing new. Like, that's the thing. We see, like, oh, this seems like a new thing. It is a tale as old as time. We had Irish immigrants coming over, landing in New York Harbor during the Civil War. They get off of one boat, sign here, and get on that boat. You're in the military.
Hacha, the old switcheroo.
Yeah. It's like, you want 3 meals in a uniform? Sign here. It's like, shit.
Why not?
It's like, it's only a 3-month enlistment.
Oh, God.
If you make it.
Yeah, right. Well, shit, Nick, if you don't have any more questions, I feel like this would be a pretty good place to wrap the first of its kind within this series.
Our history segment?
Yeah.
Yet to be named. Officially.
Officially, yes.
But
we're working on it.
We'll get there.
We'll have a pretty little picture along with everything else here in the background in the next couple of episodes. So
sweet.
But yeah, I'm satiated.
Listen.
Satiated. I'm satisfied.
This has been an absolute pleasure.
Thanks.
Thank you.
It was all mine.
Thank you for really just coming in and
thanks for having me.
Dropping knowledge on us, because a lot of these things, I mean, there's a difference between hearing about something and then really going into depth and exploring the different events around that and giving it proper context for people. And I feel like that's super important, especially now.
Yeah.
With a whole bunch of we have too much information. I mean, we have too much information floating around, and a lot of the time people read headlines as opposed to reading the whole article, Yeah,
it's a lot of yellow journalism.
Yeah.
Same thing we had in the Spanish-American War.
Yeah, there you go. Full circle, folks. Well, listen, I not only appreciate you, but appreciate the beautiful, beautiful, smart, wise, just hands down amazing listeners and viewers. Special. Super special. Thank you, folks, for tuning in.
Don't forget to like, comment, and subscribe.
Exactly. You already know what to do. Just hit that subscribe button.
Booyah!
Hit that like button. For the folks on streaming services listening to us, hey, we love you guys too. I mean, listen, we love everyone that comes around, that gives their time to listen to this thing. That's what keeps us going. So we appreciate it. And this has been your hosts once again, Dima
and Nick
and
Bryon.
Yeah, there you go. So we'll be back. We'll be doing this once every...
Looking at first Sundays
every month. So stay tuned, and we're out.
See you.